Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Policy, talk about music, movies, art and culture, and this is Billboard Breakdown. Okay, normally what happens on a week full of new arrivals from a big release, you can normally expect a bunch of them just to fall off the week afterwards, or at least take a sizable dip after the hype fades. What you don't normally expect is that nearly all of them to gain traction and for the charts to pick up all the remaining tracks from that album that you didn't cover and add them too. Such was the apparent magnetism of Drake and Future that not only did they not go away, they got even bigger and brought even more along for the ride. Oh joy. But we'll get to that a little bit later. Let's instead focus on our top 10. Unsurprisingly, The Hills by The Weeknd reigns at the very top for another week as he tops sales and airplay with considerable power on YouTube and streaming. This is in contrast to the faltering of What Do You Mean by Justin Bieber at number 2. Not by much, of course. It sells a ton of YouTube with strong sales and surging airplay, but streaming did slip a little bit this week. Mostly thanks to the competition of Hotline Bling by Drake rising up to number 3 thanks to taking the top spot in streaming with great sales and big gains in airplay too. And again, this is without a video, although with that coming soon, I reckon it's only a matter of time before Drake takes that number 1 spot. It was also enough to push back Can't Feel My Face by The Weeknd down to number 4. Even though, despite some good streaming and gains on YouTube, the sales were not exceptional, and it started slipping on airplay. Not quite in free fall just yet, but it's really only just a matter of time. Then we had 679 by Fetty Wap and Monty rise up to number 5, mostly holding up steady on streaming and picking up decent sales and airplay, but I can see it getting passed in later weeks by a song like Locked Away by Rock City and Adam Levine, which rose up to number 6 on stronger sales and surging airplay, even if the streaming isn't exceptional. What's more important is that all the gains here were enough to shove back Watch Me by Salento down to number 7, as the sales look like they've finally started to falter and YouTube took a hit as well. Right beneath it, we've got our coming replacements, the first being Wildest Streams by Taylor Swift at number 8, which might have lost YouTube this week, but compensated with huge sales and runaway airplay. No streaming, but I'm getting the feeling that the Taylor Swift hype machine doesn't really even need streaming in the same way anymore. Beneath it, we've got a new entry to the top 10, and one I'm surprised he had to catch fire on this much, Stitches by Shawn Mendes at number 9. Okay, seriously, this awkward little song and not something big, but regardless, it's here thanks to similar airplay gains and sales boosts, only with streaming compensating for YouTube, and both these gains push back Good For You by Selena Gomez and A$AP Rocky down to number 10, which is now just in free fall on airplay with weak sales and streaming. It'll be gone fairly soon. One thing that I'd like to note though is since The Weeknd unseated Omi, the top 10 has been dominated by Canadian music, most of which aren't as big up here, and that for many months of this year, the number 1 spot on the American Hot 100 has been dominated by acts that aren't American. Just food for thought, just think about that for a sec. But stepping away from that, let's talk about our losers and dropouts. And the latter camp, I find it pretty hard to complain. Yes, we lost Alright by Kendrick Lamar, and Honey I'm Good by Andy Grammer, and I Don't Like It I Love It by Flo Rida, Robin Thicke, and Vernine White. But if that meant we can knock off Classic Man by Jadena featuring Roman G and Arthur, Rico by Meek Mill featuring Drake, and Crash and Burn by Thomas Rhett, the latter probably blocking it from landing on the year-end list from 2015, I am definitely not complaining. That's just a wonderful thing. Hell, losing Kick the Dust Up by Luke Bryan down to 99 and Gunna by Blake Shelton down to 97, that's not half bad either. Granted, country had another rough week with Buy Me a Boat by Chris Jansen continuing its free fall to 73, and John Cougar, John Deere, John 316 by Keith Urban dropping down to 50. But then again, they're both near the end of their run at 20 weeks, no surprises there. Similar case with Ghost Town by Adam Lambert falling down to 91, or Uptown Funk by Mark Ronson and Bruno Mars falling back down to 27. The big surprise there was that Uptown Funk got a revival at all, not that it's going down. Outside of that, Infinity by One Direction proved to be a complete non-starter, told you, falling down to 85, which leaves Black Magic by Little Mix slipping again down to 89. Again, it's a damn shame. It's a really good pop song, and I'm actually kind of looking forward to the album. It looks pretty good. But now we've got our gains. Let me just blow through all the Drake and Future boosts in a hurry, because I really don't care at this point. Jumpman goes to 21. Big Rings rises nicely to 52. It'll be the hit, I hope. Diamonds Dancing rises up to 53. Scholarships goes to 69. Live from the Gutter goes up to 74. And most depressingly, Digital Dash and I'm the Plug went to 62 and 76 respectively. What's worse is that Chris Brown's newest track, Liquor, somehow picked up to 61 off of the video, even despite the unsettling connotations everywhere in that song, and the fact that it's just an unstable mess. Fortunately, we've got Levels by Nick Jonas, who after the disaster that was Jealous very early this year, turned into a surprisingly solid pop star, because I still really like this song. But on the opposite note of acts I don't suspect will have much pop viability in the very near future, we've got our returning entries, starting with...
Where do the good boys go to hide away?
know it's not a good thing when I remember more of my analysis of the song than I remember the song itself. Well, it's because a revisit to the track doesn't give me much that stands out, much to say. Muted keyboards, trap hi-hats, choppy bass, solid vocals supporting lyrics that are just painfully high school, with a crowd sing-along for the bridge that doesn't really build to much beyond that. Overall, it's not exactly a good song, but I'd take Hideaway over, say, this.
We are the new Americana. High on legal marijuana. Raised on Biggie and Nirvana. We are the new Americana.
Wow, this music video couldn't be trying to leap on the dystopian trend more if it tried. Plus a healthy dose of Joan of Arc imagery to make it at least marginally more visceral. Shame the song still blows, trying to milk a fusion of Lord's populism without her tight writing, and Lana Del Rey's appropriation of vintage iconography to clumsily repurpose old glam as new, and it really doesn't work, especially with this video. Look, I get why people like Halsey. Every generation wants to have something that could scream a punk, defying the man, that new generation statement. But say what you will about a band like Green Day, at least they wrote decent melodies, and when they tried for arena rock bombast, they could actually pull it off. Sorry, Halsey, bragging that you're high on legal marijuana and listen to Biggie and Nirvana doesn't make you sound cool. It makes you look like you're trying way too hard to seem edgy, and you just can't pull it off. Sorry. So now that all that's settled, let's get on to our new arrivals, starting with number 96, Lay It All On Me by Rudimental featuring Ed Sheeran. Well, this is a bit awkward, and yet another case of the UK being several steps ahead of the American Hot 100, because while the drum and bass band Rudimental might be a household name over there, and for chart nerds like me, this is their first ever song debuting on the Hot 100, and honestly, this is pretty good. Anchored in a solid piano and synth melody, a pretty damn propulsive, thicker beat on the chorus, Ed Sheeran's more soulful multi-track vocals, this is pretty solid. Yeah, I say more in his willowy falsetto range, it's admittedly not where I think Ed Sheeran is at his best, and his lyrics aren't that special, and I don't think the song lands with quite the impact in that melodic progression. It could hit harder, especially with those washed out oily flourishes on the back half of the song, but this is definitely passable, and honestly the more I listen to it, pretty damn good. I'll take it. Number 87, Jersey by Future.
You do what you want when you pop it. You do what you want when you cop it. You do what you want when you got it. Yeah, you do what you want when you pop it. You do what you want when you got it. Huh? I be on sir, they know it. Huh? Stack on some money, then blow it. Huh.
You know, I should have predicted this track showing up because, hey, you give Drake a solo track on the collaboration album, of course Future should get one too, right? And I'm gonna say something that might actually blow your minds. I don't mind this song. Well, it's because it doesn't swamp itself out in the reverb while still getting some dramatic swell, keeps the melody prominent, and the synth tone is actually pretty decent. I don't mind this. Sure, Future is still being Future all over it. It's probably darker than it really should be for a flossing anthem about wearing jerseys, but there's an odd nervousness to this song, as Future seems spooked as he's trying to retreat back into his comfort zone. And sure, said comfort zone is kind of boring as hell for all of spending and dirty Sprite, but I've definitely heard worse off of this collaboration tape, so I guess I can take this. This is not bad. Number 86, Jugg by Fetty featuring Monty.
See how well you move, I teach you how to jug with me. I teach you how to jug with me. I teach you how to jug, baby. I teach you how to jug with me.
This, on the other hand, yeah, it's not one of my favorites from Fetty Wap's debut. I know I like that album a lot more than most, but trying to make Jugg a thing over that skittering keyboard melody that really doesn't go well against that hi-hat progression and a whole load of fake low horns and Monty's least likable verse with him trying to pull a similar elongated syllable thing as Fetty Wap, and it's nowhere near as catchy. And here's the thing that baffles me. Was I the only one who thought that Trap Love went just so hard that'd be an easy pick for the next single? Because this, it's below average, and Fetty Wap is not the kind of artist who can afford below average songs, especially considering his painfully limited lyrical skills. After all, you can only sustain your momentum on songs like this for so long. In other words, you have to keep pumping out bangers, and this is not one of them. Number 84, Don't by Bryson Tiller.
Don't play with it, don't be dishonest. Ay. Still not understanding this logic. Ay. I'm back and I'm better. I want you bad as ever. Don't let me just let up.
So you know I've said in the past that Drake's hands can be everywhere in the Hot 100 these days? Well, here's another example. Because Bryson Tiller might have garnered a lot of music industry insider attention was a co-sign from Timbaland, it was probably the co-sign from Drake that got him the most press and got Tiller's debut album Trap Soul to chart surprisingly well, with this being his lead-off single. And normally got a pretty mixed record with artists that Drake has co-signed, and surprise surprise, this guy sounds exactly like a guy that Drake would co-sign. Murky, washed out sound with minimal beat trying way too hard to be eerie with a singer midway between R. Kelly's most understated songs and Drake himself with a little bit of Chris Brown thrown in, complete with bitter lyrics that are trying to snap at a guy who doesn't treat the girl all that well, and yet don't shy away from slamming the girl a few times for good measure as if you didn't want to have any class at all. It's just sour, and even though Tiller tries to brush it off as saying it's the other guy that just makes him feel this way and makes him sound like this, it doesn't really excuse it. I mean, pull yourself together, dude. That, coupled with the obnoxiously pitch-shifted bridge, makes this one song that I'm not unhappy I missed the first time, because honestly, this isn't any good. Number 82, Change Locations by Drake and Future.
Me and my friends, we got money to spend. Me and my friends, we got money to spend. Me and my friends, we got money to spend. Me and my friend, we got money to spend.
Start the rock, got me to the ceiling. I think the Percocets had me in my feelings.
And we're now back to the Drake Show, and somehow I feel I've heard this song before. Sparse, rougher beat, washed out synths, an air of melancholy that completely doesn't fit the vibe of money stacked to the ceiling and screwing so many models you need to start to move on to screwing waitresses, and then moving on to drinking so many bottles they've gotta go change clubs. And sure, Drake's got a few decent lines, but you'd think for how shallow this track is, they could at least be having some fun and make it sound enjoyable. This song's just tedious and making me wish that I could go back to listening to Fetty Wap. At least he's having fun. Number 78, Plastic Bag by Drake and Future.
Go ahead and pick up all the cash. You danced all night, girl, you deserve it. Get a plastic bag. Go ahead and pick up all the cash. Go ahead and pick up all the cash. You danced all night, girl, you deserve it. Oh yeah, Magic City on a Monday. Esco treat that shit like church on Sunday. Niggas look at us like maybe one day.
Well, it's better than Change Locations, but I think that might be because Drake takes more of the lead and the production is modestly better, with slightly more prominent percussion, faded synths that have a little bit more color thanks to some of the backing vocals ebbing in near the back half of the song, and an oddly vintage crackle around the edges of the mix that I didn't mind. Lyrically, it's about a stripper getting a plastic bag to pick up all the money that was thrown at her that evening, and I just imagine that mental image and I just get a feeling of overwhelming sadness. Not a good picture. Look folks, at this point I have covered every single song that Drake and Future included on this collaboration tape, and maybe one or two of the songs had any sort of potential in the long term. And again, I think Drake is reaching a point of overexposure faster than even he might realize, continuing how much some of the quality has fallen off. He could be in a lot of trouble in a year or so if he runs into any real competition. Just saying. Number 71, Writings on the Wall by Sam Smith.
Tell me, is this where I give it all up for you? I have to risk it all. 'Cause the writings on the wall.
So let me get something surprising out of the way first. I think, in theory, the choice for Sam Smith to do a Bond theme is a fantastic idea. Seriously, he's got the serious stiffness to fit the veneer of aristocracy that touches the Bond franchise in the past decade, while being just soulful enough to invoke that smoother touch when soul anthems were the standard for Bond's best songs in the 60s and 70s. That being said, I'm conflicted about the song. The instrumentation is fine enough, could be afforded to be a little bit smokier and darker, not quite as orchestral, but that's me nitpicking. And I mostly like the grand dramatic swell of some of the lyrics, as they do work well for the tragedy of Bond's character. The problem I have though is with Sam Smith's vocal arrangement. Not his voice, his falsetto might not be as clear as I normally like, he's got a bit of a lisp there, but again, that's nitpicking. But the fact that he spends nearly half the song in that falsetto, maybe it's just me, but considering how powerful and rich Sam Smith can sound in his low to mid range, the proof is on the pre-chorus. That sounds fantastic. For him to spend so much of it in this thinner upper range struck me as a real misstep, especially for a Bond anthem. And yeah, of course, it doesn't help matters that Adele's Skyfall, one of the best Bond songs in years, is still fresh in plenty of people's minds, but mostly because she still had that smoky, organic rasp that Sam Smith really can't quite pull off, especially in his upper range. Now, don't get me wrong, there have been far far worse Bond songs. I'm still convinced Sam Smith is a good Bond song in him. He can pull this off eventually, but frankly, I'd just rather see Nick Cave do one first. Why hasn't Nick Cave done a Bond song? He'd be a great fit for it. And finally, number 56, Alive by Sia. I gotta say it. It's weird that Sia is now somebody that the mainstream considers as a pop star. Maybe it's just being familiar with the material from the indie sphere before David Guetta and 1000 Forms of Spear and Chandelier turned her into a household name. But the fact that Sia is now the biggest debuting act on the Hot 100 this week just feels kind of strange to me. What's all the more strange is that this is a song that Sia co-wrote with Tobias Jesso Jr., not a great sign, but I guess I get his appeal even though I didn't like his debut, and Adele of all people. This was intended for Adele, a third album before being rejected at the last minute. After Rihanna rejected the song too, Sia recorded it for her upcoming album early 2016. And wow, this is something. Sure, it still plays the same template of aggressively heavy percussion and Sia just shredding her voice to an alarmingly painful and raw degree, but with a more prominent keyboard melody, less reverb, more actual melodic swell, especially in the chorus to provide a real anchor point for her lyrics, and able to play off it in the crescendos. It's a better style of that sound. Hell, as much as the vocals make me wince painfully for someone who does a lot of singing, that just sounds like it hurts. It does fit the lyrics of a woman who's been through absolute hell and has found her own way out, and she's still alive. She's triumphant. It's a visceral song, but it earns it. And while I'm still not quite sure it can match the careening desperation of Chandelier, it's still a damn good song. I really like this. Definitely recommend it. And you know, that ends out our week. And wow, the pickings are a little bit slimmer here. Sia, she just runs away with the best of the week with Alive, but honorable mention is kind of trickier. I think I'm gonna give it to Lay It All On Me by Rudimental featuring Ed Sheeran. As for the worst, I think I soured most on Don't by Bryson Tiller more than anything, with Change Locations by Drake and Future getting the dishonorable mention. Yes, the music video was just enough to save Halsey here, even despite how hysterical that song remains. It's just a mess. Let's hope we get something different other than Drake up ahead for his sake more than mine. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.